Now you've heard a little bit about code, and now I'm going to talk about soft skills. So I know you're all super excited and are really upset that Ruger doesn't allow us to serve alcohol now, because I'm about to talk to you about talking for a while. So, just gonna... I'm replicating what you usually feel in Teams meetings, like when the meeting is started, just us all awkwardly staring at each other, waiting for someone to talk. I just wanted to start the presentation feeling like that, just to make a point that communication and not so effective communication is an important part of our actual work life. Like, yes, we're developers, but developers are essentially professional communicators. It's just a lot of us are not very good at it. So, hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll have some things that you can do better in your job, and if you're lucky, maybe things that will help in your just day-to-day life too. And if you don't, then sorry. This is the first time I've done this presentation, so we'll see how it goes. So it's gonna be mostly made up of things that I've discovered over the years with a little bit of research, and by research I mean I asked ChatGPT, what does a effective communication in software development look like, and then I made a presentation over that. So what better way to start a presentation about effective communication than with a cliche? So everyone has seen this. There's only two hard things in computer science: cache invalidation and naming things. I'm not going to talk about cache invalidation because I don't want people to make fun of me, and I will talk about a bit about naming things. I'm going to start with communication inside of the code, and we're going to work all the way up to outside of the code, and you're going to see that a lot of the same concepts apply no matter where you're communicating. So, and the code you write is the core piece of communication that we work with. That's what is both communicating to your user through code and communicating to other developers. Like, I know a few of us have Git blamed each other and not known who we were, and it's good to just remember that other people are seeing your code, and also your future self is seeing your code, which can be embarrassing. So, what is the goal of writing code? Technically, the goal of writing code is to make something that works, right? Like, you're trying to translate your words, your human thoughts into computer language. So you're trying to talk to a computer that speaks a completely different language than you, and that is the main purpose of code, is to make working code. And good code is not necessarily, like, a good program is not necessarily made up of good code. This is a screenshot from the game Celeste. If any of you are familiar with it, it's won a lot of awards. And this is the player class. It's over 5,000 lines of code. Like, there's no one who's going to come in, look at the code of this game, and be like, oh yeah, that's easy to understand. So, but this game won all sorts of awards, and it's a great game, but the code is not. So, like, you don't have to write good code to make a good app. But if other people are going to be seeing your code, or if you are going to be coming back to your code, you probably do want to, like, make your code a bit more clear, because how many of you have ever written something and then never looked at it again? Besides side projects, those don't count. That's what you're supposed to do. Like, you're supposed to halfway finish it and then never look at it again. But if it's a production code, someone's gonna see it. So now I'm going to tell you a story. It's a bit of a tangent. It's about something that recently happened to us at BankID. So we recently restructured the whole company. Oh yeah, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Jason. I'm an Android developer and engineering manager at BankID. And yeah, that should have been at the front, so I'll fix that next time. But we just restructured the whole company to work as feature teams instead. Before this, we were an app team with all of the app developers on one team, which basically just made us a bottleneck for the whole company. So everybody wanted to put things in the app, but we had an app priority list. So if a new team came along and wanted something, they wouldn't be at the top priority. Everything at Bank ID is top priority, but they wouldn't be the toppest of top priority. Like you know how it works. So we were the bottleneck. And then teams started making web views because they couldn't get app developers, and then they asked the app to put web views in it, and that's not what any of us want. So we fixed that, or we think we fixed it. We'll see. We just changed to this new structure right after summer, but now we're in product teams. So and then one product team we made was a team to try to turn the app into a platform. So like make the app function as a place that all the products can put different parts in, and just make sure like the app's not reinventing the wheel for every different product, because the user doesn't know that there's 6 different teams working on the app. They see one app icon, one app. So we actually made a team for this, and we called it Team App Platform. We were trying to make the app as a platform, and we came up with this name in about 30 seconds, and we were just trashing that previous quote, like, naming things isn't hard. People are just dumb. So we worked as Team App Platform for a few weeks. We had a great day. That was easy. And after a couple weeks and people coming and telling me like, you're so annoying, I realized we have a problem, because at Bank ID we also have a team called Team Platform. So that's not us. We were not Team Platform, but people thought that I represented Team Platform and was the one who was like, that Team Platform is the one who like helps you get an Azure instance or make repos and stuff. So there's some friction there, and people thought that was us. So we had a meeting, as you do in Norway. So we had a meeting about what to name ourselves, and it was just like, what are all the synonyms for core? We're app core, app platform, and then we had app foundation. So we thought that sounds nice. Like it's also a sci-fi word, so that's cool. And none of the other teams at Bank ID were using it. So we renamed ourselves to App Foundation. Then we made a PR to the platform team. I can just read this. It says, this is from our tech lead. It says, well, the guy who reviewed the PR to the platform team also merged it. I had to pick a short name. It seemed like nobody else used more than 5 characters. So he temporarily wrote AFDTN to represent App Foundation. And then that started to appear everywhere, because repos were automatically created, Azure instances were started to get federated. So we had AFGN everywhere. And like, if you don't know what App Foundation is, it looks like it's almost all homegrown keys too. So like, it looks like someone just on a keyboard. So we realized, as you can see, 19 replies in the Slack thread. This was the first of many. We're making a service to distribute access tokens to all of the different product teams for the app. So we have one authentication service in the app. So we realized that when the platform team thought this was not a temporary name and just merged it, like we remembered, oh yes, platform people, they work deep into Linux systems, and we know that the longer you work with Linux systems, the more you develop hippopotamonstrosis esquidiliophobia. I think I got that. Hippopotamonstrosis esquidiliophobia. Yeah, that's the fear of long words. So I think all Linux developers have that, or they're afraid of just vowels, or they're all printing their code out and wanting to save on ink. I'm not really sure what the reason is, but we realized that this name was bad and we needed to think of something else. So we opened up Google, started translating words into Latin, because that's the first step, right? So you take all the words that might represent your service, you translate them into Latin. Those were either taken or too long, or they didn't sound right, so we started looking up lists of gods, because developers don't have any sort of complexes. Like of course we're going to name our stuff after literal deities. Couldn't find any that related to security that were short and sounded good. So then we jumped just a list of gods, just in general, and just looking for short names, looking for something that made sense, and like eventually we landed on Gaia, which is a personification of the earth It was short. It's readable. We have other services that were named Greek words from Greek philosophy. And then our tech lead actually used to work at Google, and he said that was also the name of their internal service that distributed access tokens. So we stole it, basically. So we stole Google's name. So we're like, yeah, if it works for Google, it works for us. So what's the point of that story? This is kind of silly. Like, naming things is important, but you shouldn't have to put this much thought into it, because also, if you know the whole story, the name Gaia might make sense. But if you don't know the whole story, if someone just sees a service named Gaia, you're not going to say, oh yeah, access tokens and credentials. That makes sense. Yeah, of course. So like, we spent all this work. That's what it's called, by the way. So like, everything's done. That's what our service is going to be named. But it's fine. Like, it's a cool name. It makes us feel fun because look, our stuff is made out of a god, so we're cool, right? But so naming core services kind of might need a lot of thought, but that's not your daily stuff. Normally you're just naming variables or functions or stuff. So I might make some of you mad here, but I'm going to just start talking a little bit about naming, but we're going to go past it quickly, so don't start throwing snacks at me or anything. But so we'll just start with a couple of rules. Your name should be clear and concise, so don't make random characters and don't make them too long. Like, I actually had this in code for a few minutes just because I have a 49-inch monitor, so it's fine for me. I couldn't figure out what to name this thing, but it was a scrollable column with docked buttons if needed in portrait and stuff on the left with buttons on the right in landscape layout. So like, that's an extremely descriptive name. No one reading that would be confused what this layout is doing, but it's a little too long. So don't go overboard. Find a happy middle ground. Your name should be descriptive. So if you've got a function that just says submit or navigate, like, sure, you just wrote it so you know what you're submitting or what you're navigating, but if somebody else who doesn't know the domain comes in and sees, like, what are they submitting? So like, are you submitting a user ID? Where are you navigating to? So like, you shouldn't have to have background knowledge to read code. And like everything I'm about to say, just to an extent, like a disclaimer, like the developer's favorite answer, it depends, right? So your code should be consistent. So if you're naming your repositories, don't start naming them managers in one place. If you're not using repositories, don't start using repositories unless you're talking to other people. So just, your code should be consistent between different parts of the code. Because we're usually making apps. Apps can get bigger, and if you're split across teams, you would like someone from another team to be able to help you out with a problem and not have to relearn how to make an Android app. Like, consistency also with naming. Like, if you name your thing, if view model goes at the end of all of your view models, make sure it goes at the end of all of your view models. So profile, view model, blah, blah, blah. So be consistent. And be grammatically correct. Like, everyone might speak different languages, but your code is probably in English, and it's good to be able to parse it as you're reading a sentence. So like, for example, it's better to name something profile view model than view model profile, because when you're speaking out loud in English, adjectives go before nouns. So like, you want to think about that a little bit. You don't think about grammar in code, you only think about syntax, but code should have grammar too. It's just the compiler doesn't care because it's a robot. So just some general tips. So ask yourself when you're naming things, what does it do and what does it store and represent? So use descriptive words, not generic words. And it can be pretty long, just don't make it verbose. Like, we're not printing things on a newspaper. So don't abbreviate. It's unnecessary, unless you're abbreviating something that's like 4 words long already. But don't be a Linux admin. Like, use your vowels and use full words, because we don't have to care about how many bytes our code is taking up in memory anymore. Like, we're Android developers, we're not doing deep embedded systems with 5 bytes of RAM or something silly like that. And know your context. So like if you've got private variables, you don't necessarily need to be as descriptive. Like if the file you're in is giving you context, you can be a bit more vague with your naming. But if your thing is a public variable or public function, you want to be as descriptive as possible because you need to make the assumption that you don't know where it's going to be called from. So this is a buzzword that we all like to talk about, self-documenting code. So in theory, if you write good code, you shouldn't need to write comments. And that's what's touted a lot, but that's not necessarily correct. I think people take this a bit too far and they become afraid of comments. They feel like if you're writing comments, your code isn't good enough. But I disagree completely, and that's not true. There's some rules where I always write comments, and then there's some rules where I write comments often. So if you don't know, like when you make a JavaDoc or KDoc comment in Android Studio, it adds stuff to a tooltip when you mouse over. So like every time, especially in like a design system, if you're making a component, I always write this, even if the title, like even if I didn't have what the title's heading size and everything was, if I just said the title is a title, I still like having that KDoc there just because then people know when they're using the thing, they can quickly see without having to go and read in the code. So yeah, so make comments for public things, and aside from public functions, if you're doing something very complicated and try to think, like have some what's the word, some self-awareness that just when you're banging your head at a problem for a day and a half and then suddenly everything becomes clear to you, then it all looks really easy, but the next person doing it has not banged their head against that code for a day and a half. So like think about them and think about yourself after you get out of the flow state. After the weekend, when you come back on Monday, do you want to understand that animation you did? Like what are these numbers? Why am I doing this math equation here? So like when I do animations, I always make comments, and when I just do other things that are intensely complex, like if any of you ever work at VIPS and go to the expense split code, the expense split part of the code, you're gonna see apologies from me in my comments, because like I wrote it 3 or 4 times and it was never good, so I just ended up writing like I'm sorry for this code, it's complicated, if you would like to try again, good luck, please contact me if you do a better job. So I did it 3 or 4 times, and it became different kinds of messes. So yeah, there's comments are sometimes unavoidable. If you write comments, you'll make people happy. Like very rarely is someone gonna look at a code and see comments and be like, ugh, comments. What kind of simple developer made this? So it's only adding things to your code. This is a picture from one of our code review sessions at BankID. We've got hologram computers. We're super high tech and diverse. But so this is a live picture. But Trim actually mentioned this in his presentation. But code reviews are not a gatekeeping method. Like code reviews are not there so some tech lead or manager can make sure you only put code that he likes into the repo. And if that is how the code reviews work at your company, you should confront that tech lead, which I'll get to in a second. But like you don't let it work like that. Like speak up, because it should be a conversation. A code review is a place for everyone to learn, because especially if you're on an app where people are in product teams, when I write something, it might be a new domain for other people. So your code review, your pull request should explain the domain, explain how to do things, explain why you've made these decisions. And then if you've introduced a new pattern, it's a great place to start the conversation talking about that new pattern. You might get people who disagree with you, but then that's a perfect place for that discussion before it gets into the code. And then, yeah, so it shouldn't feel negative. It shouldn't feel like a fight. Like, and you've been on this pull request for 2 or 3 days, and you're just ready to get rid of it, but someone else has no idea what you just wrote. So, and it's a good time that someone else should look and see, like, I don't understand this code. Can you add some comments? And that's when You can have very long threads about naming. Like, that's where those discussions usually come up, right? Pull requests. But so they're a chance to teach, and then everyone should be doing a code review. Like, I hope none of you have to work in a place where it's one person's job to do code reviews, and then code reviews are working as gatekeeping. Like, code reviews should be, they should involve the whole team. I know at Bank ID, when we have a particularly complicated one, we start a Slack huddle to review it. So instead of just letting it be an asynchronous thing, we do it together, and the person who's doing the pull request explains things, because then you don't need to actually review it because you're doing a live review. So it's like post-pair programming. So. Now I will move into something completely different. I don't think I've said anything too controversial yet, so I don't think I've upset anyone with my opinions. But I'm gonna start moving out of the code now. So I've been talking about how you work, and that's fine, but we're gonna move out of written code, because really what percentage of your day is writing code? If anyone says like more than 50%, like, stay at your company. Like, don't ever leave that job, because I don't think I hit 50% anymore some days. But like, most of your day is not writing code. Like, most of your day is doing other things outside of code to facilitate writing code. So I'm gonna move out of your IDE and into the real scary stuff, interacting with other humans. So this is a joke, but there is some truth to it. Like, we're all aware of who we are, right? Like, the average developer is a bit introverted. I'm secretly dying on the inside right now talking to all of you. Like, I'm controlling myself. But so confrontation is something that will happen most days in your job, because you get 5 developers in a room, you're going to have 5 very different opinions about everything. So, like, this is something you're going to be coming to a lot. So I've just got some tips on how to disagree, because that's where things go bad a lot. The first thing is, do not get mad. Like, control your emotions. Do not make emotional arguments, because one, those are logically invalid anyway, if we're gonna be very technical. And like, when you get mad, you're no longer seeing reason, so you're not taking other things in, and you just need to be aware of your body language and tone of voice. Like, I've received pull requests that I'm sure they were supposed to be nice, but the tone was just so dismissive, and then that makes me upset. And then when people just straight up tell you you're wrong, the natural psychological reaction is to get defensive and hold on to that opinion. So if you just tell someone they're wrong, they're gonna actually double down on that wrong opinion. Like, even if you're aware that this is a thing that happens, we can't really avoid doing it. Like, it's just the gut reaction. If you're told you're wrong, you're just gonna be like, no, I'm not, you're wrong. And then you end up with, like, it's never nice. So, like, the respect is what you need to do when you're disagreeing, and respect leads to empathy. And I'm just gonna say it a couple more times, because that's arguably the most important thing. Empathy. And if you don't know what empathy is, you're a very stereotypical software developer, and it's weird that you'd even come to a meetup for social things. But it's the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. So when you're disagreeing with someone, the first thing you should do is imagine yourself in their shoes making their argument to you. So that sounds a bit weird, but like, just try to make their argument for them and see if it makes sense. And you're gonna realize that they might have points that you didn't think about. And then you do all this in your head. Like, don't like literally go take their shoes off and stand in their shoes, but like, just picture yourself there. Like, do this really fast in your head though. Don't let it take a long time, because then that's just awkward. But go into the discussion assuming you're wrong. So if you disagree with something, assume that you are at fault and that other person has something very valid. And then that completely flips any power dynamic, and you're most likely to have a level discussion then. And the goal in a discussion like this is for at least one person to learn something. If you end a discussion and everyone's mad and no one's learned anything, you failed the discussion. If one person has learned something, you've succeeded, and if both of you have learned something and you've come to some sort of compromise, that's the best result you can get from this. Like, if you're going to disagree with people, somebody is at least somewhat wrong, usually. That was a horrible sentence because it was very, yeah, don't make arguments like that either. This is a picture of a developer talking to designers and product managers. That's the other thing. So talking to developers is one thing. Like you're all the same level. We have enough in common that we speak the same language. We understand how arguments are going to be made. We can try to sound smarter than each other, throw technical jargon around. But if you try to argue with a project manager, or even if you're not arguing, if you're just trying to explain something, because most arguments come from one side misunderstanding. So like arguments come about because of miscommunication. So like communication. So you probably spend, I imagine you're talking to designers or project managers or other non-technical people at least a few times a week, if not daily. And as far as they're concerned, we're magicians or wizards. Like the stuff we do is pure magic to a lot of people. Like they cannot comprehend that we can make pretty things out of numbers and letters. So you have to get really good at making metaphors and analogies, because that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people do. They'll sit down with the designer and they'll start explaining why a design won't work, and they'll say something like, oh no, they'll start talking about an animation and start talking about math or something, and then the designer's just like, what? I thought you wanted like color distributions, and I don't know what designers say, but something like that. Like, so you're not on the same page there. So I don't know if you've heard, but Bank ID, Bank Accept is now called STA, which I'm not gonna talk about the name. Like that's I have my own opinions about that, but like that's a thing. The logo's pretty cool at least, and it came with an all new design system. So we've got an existing app, and now we've got a brand new design system. We have a design system in the app with two different themes. Like, you know, the Bank ID app, it's got some purple screens and some white screens. There's actual legal reasons for the purple versus white. The purple screens, the banks own the purple screens, and like those are not our users technically, those are the bank's users, and the white screens are ours. So that we did too much legal driven development, and we've been trying to change that for a long time. And then now we're making more things that are not Bank ID. Like, so calling ourselves Bank ID, Bank Accept stops making sense, because now we're starting to have more products. We have ID Check, and then all of these new things, we didn't want to make them white to contrast with purple. We kind of wanted everything to feel like it was under one umbrella. So that went on way longer than I meant it to, but we've got a new design system, was the point I was making. We're green instead of purple now. But the problem is we're not just green instead of purple, because like I said before, we had two different themes that were symmetrical. Now we've got a new theme that finally has a dark mode, and it's only one theme, and the color tokens don't line up at all. Like the design tokens don't line up with our old design system at all. So the designers were like, this is just design stuff. Can't you guys just change the colors? Like, can't you just update this overnight? Isn't it easy? And then I was just like, no. And then so I sat down with the lead designer, and we just sat at his desk for about an hour and a half, and I just tried to explain how our design system worked currently. And after about 30 minutes, we realized that the way we wanted to work was actually the same way. We just used different words for everything. Because what we wanted to do, we wanted to have components that we use and basically just drag and drop and change the contents of. So like screens should be made of components. And that's exactly what he wanted to do in Figma. He wanted to make the templates and make the components in Figma and just be able to drag and drop them. So we realized that we were trying to reach the same goal, and then I was able to explain to him, like, we can do it this all new way, but we can't do the old app. And then what I did was I made him try to change one of the existing screens in Figma to use the new design system. And he started doing it just by changing colors, and he realized, oh, the new design system has a whole lot more colors, so he can't just change the tokens of the old system. So he got to see, like, oh, if he looks at his design kind of like its code, then we're on the same page here. So we realized we're moving towards the same thing. So we decided that the new design system will be used for the new products, and then over time we'll redesign each product at a time, and then the screens can change. So what they wanted was just to flip the switch overnight, and then I just, like, we realized that that's not going to be possible. And it was just, if I would have not said anything, we just would have been, like, complaining amongst ourselves about how this is so hard. And, like, there's a lot of people who will not communicate with the designer when they say something, and you can't just say, no, this is hard, this is impossible, we can't do this. Like, explain why, find common ground, because you're usually after the same thing. Everybody who's working on the app wants to make the best app for users, so everyone's trying to do the same stuff. Oh yeah. By the way, like, I can. So it's st with the in the, and sure, Kotlin's okay with that. I can suppress the warnings in the compiler, but then, like, one day we're gonna send an to some backend that doesn't support Unicode, and everything's gonna crash and burn. So, like, we just agreed we're not putting in the app, and then all right, so this is off topic, but I'm just gonna keep going. I'm here. It started. So, like, the new name is gonna be, like, the URL is gonna be STOE, which to me just looks like toes mixed up, so I don't really like that. And, like, I'm already upset that that's gonna be my email address, so I wasn't gonna put that in code. And then STO is not correct. Like, people are gonna read that STO, which is not sta. So in the Android app, everywhere we have something, I spelled it STUH because that's the closest approximation in English. So we have the theme and the button, because when people read that, it at least parses the same way. So, and then everyone thought it was funny, so we just went with it. So, and then the designers saw it and they're like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, well, you guys picked a stupid name, so this is where we're at. So as the final type of communication is something that most of you might not have to get into, like, it's public speaking, like what I'm doing now. But public speaking isn't necessarily just public. If you're leading a meeting or starting a discussion, you are public speaking. Like, I would argue that if you are presenting your pull request to other people, you are public speaking still. So it's the same set of skills, and I'm about to just boil all of this down into a few words and a few tips that I have, like, that let me communicate effectively. But don't take my advice for why I like public speaking, because for me it's a power trip. Like, I really like that all of you have to listen to me, and you just have to be polite and not say anything and interrupt. And you're all hungry. You see that the food arrived, and you're just like, why won't he shut up? Why isn't he stopping? So, like, we'll get there, but that's what I like. I find it thrilling, like the power trip, which is a bit psychopathic, but let's judge me later. So, I'm about to. This quote, fake it till you make it. I think that's what everything's about, and that's kind of the core of my being. Like, I know that I don't know everything. I'm giving a soft skills talk to developers, like, of course, like, I could talk about anything. I'm pretty good at the technical things, but I'm much better at the soft skills. So, like, it all boils down to this. This is what we're all doing, and if you don't think you're faking it, and you think you're just, you know everything and you're really good, you're just at the peak of the graph, and you're about to start learning something new, and you're gonna get your reality check. Or you're not pushing yourself and you're not growing. Like, if you think you know everything all the time, one, you're probably really annoying to people, and two, you're probably just not pushing yourself. So confidence doesn't come from expertise. Like, confidence is not knowing things. Confidence is being comfortable that you don't know things. So as long as you can approach anything you do, as long as you can approach it knowing that there's things you don't know, that's where the real confidence comes from, because then you don't get that anxiety and that negative feedback loop when you do screw up. Like, so when you write code, you're not writing code that's insecure. So why would you be insecure when you talk to other people? Like, there's really no reason for that. It's just like a mental thing you have to overcome. So I'm gonna boil everything down and let you go here pretty soon. So this is just my biggest tips. This is Derp Droid. You've seen him around in other slides. He's hiding at least in Router and Bank ID. I encourage you to let him hide in your apps as well if you want to make Easter eggs. Like, this is what I feel represents Android developers perfectly. Like, this is what it feels like to be an Android developer to me. Like, he's got all of these positive qualities, but he's a little derpy, which is what Android development is, right? Like, it's nice, but there's some things that are really dumb. Like, today I learned that an exception in initializer is not an exception, it's a throwable. So if you're catching exceptions, a thing called exception in initializer is not an exception, it's a throwable. And so stuff like that. Like, that's bad communication on, I can't remember if that, I'm pretty sure that comes from Java. So that's bad communication on somebody's part a long time ago. But yeah, so anyway, Derp Droid, put him in your apps. He's got a whole religion. If you want to know more, I will proselytize, but not for this talk. So, clarity, like your variable names. If you're talking to people, you need to make sure they understand what you're saying. Don't talk about a bunch of convoluted stuff. Don't try to make yourself sound smarter than you are. Just say what you mean and what needs to be said. And like I said before, have empathy. So understand your audience, know who you're talking to, put yourself in their shoes, imagine you're listening to yourself talk. Vulnerability. This is a big one that a lot of people miss. Like, that's how, if you knock yourself down a few pegs and make sure people like I'm up here talking to you, so you assume I'm an expert at stuff, but that makes a weird power dynamic for both the speaker and the audience. So, like, if you just knock yourself down and just mention, like, yes, I don't know things, I am also a fraud just like the rest of you, then, like, you can connect with your audience or whoever you're talking to better. So not just an audience. I don't know how that one really relates to code, so that kind of undermines my entire argument, but the other ones are definitely relatable. And kindness. Don't be a dick. Like, don't be mean to people. Like, people don't respond well to being mean. So, like, if you've seen negative reviews, right? Like, people who are just really, really mad. I've been indirectly called a hobby developer multiple times. People will directly attack developers, say we're bad at our jobs. They will offer their assistance, and then you look at their website that looks like it's from the 90s. But so, like, and then we all at Vips, we had a secret private channel where we took the worst reviews and made fun of the people. Like, it definitely had to be private because you didn't want that to get out. But, like, I think we all do that. If we see something, like, if we see angry people, we don't really take them seriously. So if you're going to be angry, people aren't going to take you seriously. People respond much better to kindness than anger and just annoyingness. And then if you combine all of these things together, you get confidence, which is the main thing that lets you communicate well. Like, you just have to understand that both you know what you're talking about and there's things that you don't know, so you can accept input from others. And a big point for all of this is an active skill. So it's not just something that you wait for and it happens passively. This is something, when you're communicating, you have to constantly think about this stuff. You have to actively try to apply these principles. And there's no code labs for communication, so you can't just learn it. You have to actually do it. So you have to practice it. That's the only way to learn it. There's no communication code lab, and it never stops. Like, you just always have to do it. So I've always got these 5 things on my mind, and it lets me not completely bomb a talk, which hopefully I haven't done. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So yeah, I think our food is here. This is the rest of the agenda for the night. We've got drinks. I want to thank Rooter again once more for paying for all the stuff and having our venue. And like I said at the beginning, if you know other people, other Android developers who might be interested in coming to this stuff, or more importantly, if you know people who want to talk about something, like, whoa, I can't do this every time. Like, I don't know what to talk about. If someone wants to give me something to talk about, maybe I could do something. But like, we need you guys to help us, because it's not us, it's us. Like, yes, the organizers started it, but we don't want to own it. We just want to make sure that someone is behind, like, pushing things. So like, if your company wants to give us a place, if your company wants to sponsor an event, or even if you are just interested in talking about something, you don't have to be a professional speaker. Like, this is a good place to practice things. So like, that's what I'm doing. I practice this, and like, maybe other conferences might like it. That's my goal. I want people to pay for me to fly and be in hotels. Like, I'd love to professionally talk about code instead of writing it, but we'll see. So like, if you just want to practice something in front of people, like, that's great. Like, just reach out to us somewhere. Where's the best way to contact us? Is it LinkedIn?
App Norge?
App Norge. Yeah, we're all there. You can find our names there in the App Norge site. Yeah, GDG page. Yeah, there's LinkedIn's. There's a lot of ways. Just reach out, because we can't reach out to all of you individually to ask. So it goes back to the whole communication thing. You need to be active about it, and like, we need help. Like, you don't. If I'm talking at everyone, you'll eventually stop coming. So
maybe can you send the links to those pages that we can reach out to the meetup group after this meetup?
Yeah, I can post it in the comments. That works. I'm not gonna send another email because I don't want to email spam. I did that yesterday because I couldn't find this building either, so I needed a red arrow. So that's why I emailed you yesterday. But yeah, and like, if you can, for the next event, try to make sure you sign up a few days before, so we've got to order food and everything. Like, it's great to have everyone come, but it was like we were all stressed right at the end because we had 15 people sign up yesterday after we ordered food. Luckily, we over-ordered, so everyone should have food. And if you don't, just come up to one of us and we'll figure something out. But I guess that's it. You're free to go eat and then come back in here, mingle. We have the, don't interrupt me. And we have the room until what, 9? But I'm not gonna be here until 9. But like, be here. Come, leave whenever you feel like you're ready to leave. Just mingle. I hate that word, but do it. So now clap.